Hollywood can't seem to let go of that horrific story, the one about the night of August 8, 1969, when Sharon Tate and 4 others were brutally murdered at 1050 Cielo Drive. More than half a century has passed, yet the Manson family murders continue to haunt not just the media, but popular culture itself. What is it about a tragedy from so long ago that still grips us so powerfully? Perhaps it's because this was no ordinary murder. Sharon Tate, a radiant 26-year-old starlet, 8 months pregnant, embodied the beauty, innocence, and promise of Hollywood. Her death, and the barbaric manner in which it occurred, the savage stabbings, the word pig scrawled in blood, became a stark symbol of the end of the naive hippie era. And Charles Manson, the mastermind with wild hair and deranged eyes, was unlike any criminal Hollywood had ever encountered. He was the embodiment of ideological evil, a mad guru who sought to ignite a race war. But perhaps the deeper reason this story endures lies in the unsettling questions it poses. Is fame a double-edged sword? Manson, a failed rock star hopeful, ultimately achieved a grotesque notoriety his music career never could have touched. Sharon Tate, a talented actress who deserved to be remembered for her craft, became defined by her tragic demise. Is Hollywood, at its core, still obsessed with the inherent fragility of the very stars it creates? To truly grasp the case that forever altered Hollywood, we must turn back the clock to the late 1960s, a time when the California dream was slowly morphing into a nightmare. And the Cielo Drive estate became the stage for one of entertainment history's most shocking crimes. Today's biographical documentary has been enhanced with AI technology to deliver the most accurate facts and compelling storytelling. Hollywood's cultural landscape in the late 1960s. The late 1960s plunged America into profound upheaval. The escalating Vietnam War fueled a powerful wave of youth protests, while the hippie movement, with its mantra "Make love, not war," swept through major cities. This was a period of rebellion against the establishment of LSD and psychedelic rock, as a young generation sought new meaning in life beyond traditional values. The assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy in 1968 further fractured the national psyche, replacing optimism with a pervasive sense of dread and disillusionment. Racial tensions simmered, and the civil rights movement was met with fierce resistance in many parts of the country. Hollywood too underwent a significant transformation during this era. The classic studio system was in decline, its rigid control over stars and productions loosening. This decline made way for a wave of young directors, often trained in film schools and influenced by European New Wave cinema, who brought fresh, often rebellious, ideas to the screen. Films like Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, and The Graduate, 1967, challenged traditional narratives and moral boundaries, reflecting the changing societal norms. Stars like Sharon Tate, with her youthful beauty and modern style, became icons of this evolving era, embodying a new kind of Hollywood glamour that was more free-spirited and less constrained by the old guard. Beneath the glittering surface, the counterculture's influence seeped into the upper echelons of the entertainment industry. Drug culture and sexual freedom were no longer confined to bohemian enclaves but openly permeated exclusive parties and gatherings where artists, musicians, and filmmakers mingled. Marijuana, LSD, and other hallucinogens became common recreational drugs, blurring lines and fostering an atmosphere of unrestrained experimentation. This newfound openness, however, also came with a dangerous naivete. The lines between trust and vulnerability became dangerously thin, particularly in the glamorous, yet often insular, world of celebrity. Sharon Tate, the rising star who had just made an impression in Valley of the Dolls, and her husband, director Roman Polanski, acclaimed for the hit Rosemary's Baby, became Hollywood's golden couple. They epitomized the fascinating blend of sophisticated European cinematic artistry and Hollywood's burgeoning new energy. Polanski, with his dark, psychological thrillers, and Tate, with her ethereal beauty and burgeoning acting career, were at the zenith of their professional and personal lives. Their home at 10050 Cielo Drive was an embodiment of this era's opulent, yet unguarded, lifestyle, a haven of creative freedom and lavish social gatherings. Yet, it was within this very climate of freewheeling openness, where boundaries seemed to dissolve, that lurking dangers like Charles Manson exploited the artistic community's liberated spirit, finding fertile ground for his dark intentions and ultimately turning a dream into a nightmare. The very openness that defined the era inadvertently created vulnerabilities that a predatory mind like Manson's was all too eager to exploit. Charles Manson and the Manson family. Charles Millis Manson was born on November 12, 1934, in Cincinnati, Ohio, under particularly grim circumstances. His mother, Kathleen Maddox, was a 16-year-old prostitute, and his father a nameless transient. From an early age, Manson endured a childhood filled with violence and abandonment. In 1939, his mother was arrested for armed robbery and sentenced to 5 years in prison, leaving young Manson with an indifferent aunt. "I grew up in reformatories and prisons," Manson once said. "That was the only home I ever knew." Manson's criminal path began very early. At 13, he had his first arrest for theft. Years spent in reform schools only hardened Manson. By 1955, at age 21, Manson was a seasoned offender with a string of convictions for theft, fraud, and pimping. Remarkably, however, during his time in prison, Manson developed a passion for music, particularly guitar and songwriting. In 1967, after his release from prison, Manson arrived in San Francisco at the peak of the hippie movement. With his fluent speaking ability and peculiar appearance, Manson quickly attracted a group of disaffected young people. The Manson family began to form from here, a bizarre cult composed mainly of young women mesmerized by Manson's words and charisma. Manson's recruitment methods were incredibly sophisticated. He often approached young women in the famous Haight-Ashbury district, a hub for hippies. By using LSD, a common hallucinogenic drug at the time, combined with pseudo-philosophical sermons, Manson gradually established absolute control over his followers' minds. Girls like Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten became completely mesmerized, willing to do anything at the command of Father, as they called Manson. The helter-skelter ideology, the root cause of the later murders, stemmed from Manson's distorted interpretation of the Beatles' song of the same name. Manson believed a race war was imminent between black and white people, and afterward, the victorious black population would be incapable of ruling, forcing them to turn to his family. To accelerate this process, Manson advocated for committing barbaric murders and blaming the Black Panthers, thereby igniting the conflict. Manson's relationship with artists was a strange chapter in this story. Through Dennis Wilson, the drummer for the Beach Boys, Manson gained access to well-known musicians. Wilson even let Manson and his followers stay at his home for a time before realizing their danger. Manson also attempted to record some of his own songs, hoping to become a rock star. Some of Manson's songs were even borrowed by the Beach Boys, as in the case of Never Learn Not to Love, a modified version of Manson's ceased to exist. Months spent in the artistic world left Manson with many complexes. He both craved recognition for his talent and despised their wealth and fame. It was the music industry's rejection that partly pushed Manson to his brutal decision: if he couldn't be a star, he would be the one to kill stars. The terrifying truth is that Manson never directly killed anyone. He simply gave the command, and his followers willingly carried it out. The psychological control mechanism Manson employed over his family is still studied today as a prime example of how dangerous cults operate. Manson transformed ordinary people into unhesitating killing machines, solely through the power of his words and sophisticated psychological manipulation. The Sharon Tate murders, the events and their aftermath. On the night of August 8 and early morning of August 9, 1969, one of the most brutal crimes in Hollywood history unfolded at director Roman Polanski's home in the Mulholland Drive area of Los Angeles. The primary victim was Sharon Tate, a prominent young actress and Polanski's wife, who was 8 months pregnant. She, along with 4 others in the house, was savagely murdered on that fateful night. Investigations revealed 5 perpetrators, most notably Charles Manson and members of his Manson family, an extremist, anti-establishment cult. Around 9 p.m. on August 8, the group's members secretly infiltrated Sharon Tate's villa. Armed with knives, guns, and other weapons, they carried out a bloody attack, leaving all victims brutally slain. Sharon Tate was stabbed multiple times, found motionless on the bedroom floor, while other victims including Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, and Stephen Parent were killed in a similar fashion. Chillingly, the perpetrators left blood symbols on the walls, including the word pig, amplifying the shocking and symbolic nature of the crime. Their bloody message was further conveyed through symbols and writings on the walls, acting as a challenge, an assertion of power, or a symbolic protest against society. The perpetrators also left objects like knives, broken glass, and other traces to create a terrifying scene. Beyond the shocking actions, the massacre carried a profound symbolic meaning of a war between dark forces and civilized society, reflecting the perpetrators' disturbed psyches and the unexplainable brutality present in contemporary society. The massacre sent shockwaves through the entire Hollywood artistic community, where Sharon Tate was one of the most promising young stars. Roman Polanski, Sharon's husband, was profoundly traumatized by the event. He spiraled into a state of mental collapse, unable to comprehend that his wife had been murdered under such cruel circumstances. Pain, helplessness, and fury haunted Roman for years afterward. Steve McQueen, one of Hollywood's biggest stars at the time, also expressed outrage and sorrow upon hearing of the massacre. Many other artists, including Robert Kennedy, Elizabeth Taylor, and numerous other celebrities, conveyed their deep condolences, alongside their indignation at the barbaric act. Many stars also organized charitable activities and donations to assist the victims' families and support anti-violence campaigns. However, grief and fear enveloped Hollywood for months afterward, as everyone felt insecure about their personal safety and their workplaces. Immediately after the crime, law enforcement launched a massive investigation to track down the perpetrators. Initial clues led to the identification of evidence at the scene, such as a knife, blood traces, and objects left behind by the culprits. Investigators quickly realized the case had a peculiar nature, bearing symbolic elements and a clear purpose. Through analysis of the evidence and initial testimonies, police began to focus on criminal groups linked to anti-establishment ideologies and extremist religious groups. Clues further led to the identification of members of the Manson family, an extremist criminal group led by Charles Manson. Manson was apprehended after weeks of intense pursuit. Police discovered that Manson had intended to incite a societal revolt, and the murders at Sharon Tate's home were part of his plan to sow chaos and demonstrate the group's power. The deeper motives for the crime also involved personal relationships, grudges within the entertainment industry, and the perpetrators' mental issues. However, the core point was the deliberate actions of Charles Manson and his group members, manifested through blood symbols and barbaric acts. Sharon Tate's death not only shocked Hollywood but also ignited a wave of global public outrage. The victim was one of the most promising young stars, beautiful and talented, and in the happiest period of her life, pregnant with her child. The brutality of the crime left many feeling helpless and enraged by human cruelty. Sharon Tate's death also triggered strong societal reactions, as many began to question security and the safety of stars and prominent figures in society. Simultaneously, it highlighted the barbarity of extremist criminal groups, as well as the latent dangers in contemporary society. In public opinion, the massacre sparked debates about morality, anti-establishment movements, and the perpetrators' mental health issues. Many grieved the death of a young woman carrying an unborn child, labeling it one of the most brutal crimes in American history. Public reaction was also evident through protests, anti-violence campaigns, and activities aimed at raising awareness about personal safety, preventing similar crimes in the future. The death of Sharon Tate, along with her unborn child, became a symbol of loss, brutality, and a stark reminder of the value of life and the safety of every individual in modern society. The trial and unanswered questions. Manson's disruptive courtroom tactics. Throughout his trial, Charles Manson fully embraced his role as a disruptor and manipulator. Instead of cooperating or showing remorse, he consistently caused chaos in the courtroom, disrupting order and hindering proceedings. His defiant actions, such as yelling, interrupting, banging on tables, or even shouting and singing, became tactics to grab public attention, dragging out trials and making them spiral out of control. Manson didn't stop there. He also demonstrated contempt for the legal system by challenging judges, lawyers, and witnesses. On many occasions, he would even dance or perform bizarre acts to cause disruption, making everyone present feel uncomfortable and bewildered. These tactics aimed not only to delay the trial but also clearly reflected the nature of someone who wanted to control everything, showing no guilt or regret for his actions. Manson's courtroom behavior was also a way for him to position himself as the center of attention, while simultaneously sending the message that he feared no law, but rather took pride in the brutal acts he had committed. It was thanks to these tactics that the trial became tense, protracted, and heavily marked by someone intent on obscuring the truth. Evidence and testimony from Manson family members. Throughout the trial, investigators presented compelling evidence regarding the roles of Manson and his group members. Physical evidence such as knives, bloodstains, blood symbols on the walls, and witness testimonies all clearly confirmed that the perpetrators directly participated in the bloody massacre at Sharon Tate's home. Among the perpetrators, members like Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten provided detailed confessions about their criminal journey. They recounted that Manson had clearly conveyed the idea of causing social disruption, even asserting that their actions were at his command to eliminate the reactionaries and stimulate chaos. These testimonies showed their absolute loyalty to Manson and helped clearly establish accountability for the massacre. Furthermore, physical evidence such as blood traces, items carried by the perpetrators, and forensic analyses confirmed each person's role in the crime. This evidence helped investigators clarify the criminal acts and strengthened the prosecution's case. Unresolved conspiracy theories. During the trial, many theories emerged about a potential link between Manson and shadowy forces. Some analysts questioned whether Manson was a puppet in a larger conspiracy, aimed at destabilizing society or serving the political or financial agendas of mysterious powerful entities. Some suggested that there might have been organizations or individuals behind Manson, using him as a tool to create chaos, divide society, or incite strategic conflicts. These theories were based on secret connections, the activities of anti-establishment organizations, or clandestine power groups in the 1960s. However, to this day, no clear evidence has proven these claims. In official court proceedings, investigators and lawyers found no concrete evidence linking Manson to hidden forces. Most of the evidence focused on his and his group members' clear criminal behavior. However, questions about deeper motives and intricate connections remain a subject of debate, making this case one of the most thoroughly unresolved mysteries. Life imprisonment and Manson's death. 2017. After more than 40 years of incarceration, Charles Manson maintained a self-satisfied attitude, proud of his actions and showing no remorse. Throughout his sentence, he continued to show clear contempt for the law, even claiming to be a warrior in a battle between good and evil. On November 19, 2017, Manson died at a prison hospital at the age of 83. His death not only closed a dark chapter in American criminal history but also left many unanswered questions about the connections, intentions, and motives behind the bloody 1969 massacre. Many still wonder if anyone stood behind Manson, or if any secret forces manipulated him to commit this crime. Manson's death also became a heated topic of discussion, reflecting on madness, extremism, and the societal factors that contributed to the making of this notorious criminal. Simultaneously, it left behind unresolved mysteries about the latent elements that drove the massacre, as well as the clandestine connections that investigators have yet to fully clarify. The case of Charles Manson and the horrific crimes he orchestrated with his family weren't just a string of brutal murders. They were a chilling mirror reflecting the turbulent unrest brewing within late 1960s American society. Manson, a cunning puppet master, skillfully exploited the era's chaos, the fierce anti-war sentiment, the rising tide of counterculture, and a widespread crisis of trust in authority to bend the weak and lost to his own twisted will. The massacre of Sharon Tate and her friends, in particular, laid bare the fragility of even Hollywood's brightest stars when confronted with raw violence. It was a stark, agonizing testament that fame, it seemed, was no bulletproof vest. More than half a century has slipped by since those blood-soaked nights, yet the unsettling question lingers: has Hollywood, has society itself, truly learned anything from that grim tragedy? Violence, like a persistent shadow, continues to manifest in myriad forms. And the fanatics, those souls consumed by an unhealthy obsession with celebrity, still fix their sights on the famous. The Manson case's enduring grip on popular culture, from films and books to whispered conspiracy theories, underscores its pervasive influence. It stands as a chilling harbinger, a stark warning of the peril that lurks when fame collides with the darkest corners of fanaticism, exacting a heavy price on a society lost in an illusion of safety. We're forced to ask ourselves, does the public's insatiable curiosity, fueled by the relentless pressure of media, inadvertently provide fertile ground for deranged minds to find their twisted truth in destruction? Looking beyond Manson, his case wasn't an isolated anomaly, it was a disturbing thread in a larger, unsettling tapestry. Other tragic endings, like the 1980 assassination of John Lennon by the obsessed Mark David Chapman, or the 1989 murder of actress Rebecca Schaeffer by a deranged fan, all underscore the perilous tightrope between admiration and obsession. As a society, have we done enough to safeguard these public figures, whose personal lives are so often laid bare for all to see? The answer, perhaps, remains suspended in the air, a phantom whisper. But one thing is undeniably clear: the ghost of Charles Manson still haunts us. A stark reminder of the vital need for vigilance and collective responsibility against the insidious creep of evil. Do you want to delve deeper into similar seismic cases, where obsession curdled into tragedy? Stay tuned for our next video, where we'll unearth the bloody story behind the death of the legendary John Lennon and the lessons history has desperately tried to teach us.